Welcome to our second video, The Importance of Being Ethical. Um, the English majors in the group are the theater goers. I couldn't resist The Importance of Being Earnest, which is an old and I think funny play by Oscar Wilde. And it might even be more interesting in this lecture, but you're stuck with the importance of being ethical, not the importance of being earnest. I'm sure both are important. I know the second is being ethical. That's going to be our topic here. And just as an overview, in fact, this first slide is an overview of what I'll spend the next under 20 minutes, I hope, talking about. Um, just as an overview, gosh, I've already referenced a play. Let's reference a movie, the old Jerry Maguire movie with Renee Zellweger and Tom Cruise. You remember that? If you've seen that movie, remember that line? We live in a cynical world, a cynical world. Um, some of us do live in a cynical world, and for this lecture and for a lot of the class, I want you to open your mind to a really interesting possibility about being ethical. Might surprise some of you, won't be a surprise to many of you, and I'll explain more what I mean in just a minute. But we're going to talk about, I think, one of the coolest things about being ethical in this lecture in just a bit. Just as an overview, this is our first kind of online, non-live, asynchronous lecture. So why are we doing these video lectures? Um, I just think they're superior to a textbook. I love teaching ethics. I actually retired a few months ago, but told them I'd still come back and teach ethics whenever they wanted me to because I love teaching this class. I hope that shows, and I think it's super important. But the only reason I say this is that the textbooks bore me. I think this is the most interesting possible topic to teach, but I think the textbooks are boring, and I vainly think I can do a better job of getting to the relevant points in these lectures than asking you to read a textbook. Um, at some point, I'll share student feedback on this course. Let's not burn the first lecture time doing that. But the consensus is it works. That these lectures, the consensus from the students in this class, your predecessors, is these lectures, such as they are better than a textbook. So that's one reason we're doing it. And another reason is saving time. I think I can make these shorter, so I'll quit babbling. I think I can make these shorter than a textbook chapter that might be boring anyway. The goal of these lectures, the next bullet point here, is we really, here's kind of one of the goals of the course. One of the major goals of the course is to build up to this thing called the GINN, Ginn, the GINN model of ethical decision making. John Ginn was a professor at KU, professor of journalism at KU, an internationally respected model that was invented right here on our home turf. And the goal of these opening lectures is to build you up to a really deep, thorough understanding of the Ginn model of ethical decision making, so that you understand it, so that you can use it. And then as a leader, boy, are we going to talk a lot about leadership in this course. As a leader, you can explain the Ginn model and you can defend it to others. So really, we're going to do a lot of things with these opening short lectures, but a lot of it is building you up to understand, explain, and be able to defend the Ginn model. So let's take a look at what I hope you'll try to get done in week two, just to keep up. If you get a little behind, no harm, no foul. Week two, please watch two videos. This is the first of them. Each one has an online quiz right on the Blackboard site. I think you'd be smart to look at the online quiz before you listen to the lecture. So, not meant to be hard. It's meant to be a reward for you listening to this and letting some of these ideas sink in. There's one reading, a couple of real classic readings. I love them on ethical leadership, and more in a bit on why I'm focusing on leadership. Uh, Probably obvious. Um, there is one reading that goes along with I'm sorry, there's a reading and there's a quiz that goes along with that reading. Same deal there. There will be an optional Thursday night Zoom office hours. I really do mean optional. I'm not going to be taking attendance at that CU's here. It's just in case you need some face to face or have deeper questions or whatever. Also, I hope you'll scan the syllabus. That explain. I mentioned that the last time, the first Zoom lecture that's recorded for you. Um, the syllabus explains a lot about the course. It's kind of a weird format, but it's one that has worked in the past. These lectures really are these online lectures like this one are really just for the textbookish part of the class. I'm not really going to talk about those assigned readings during these lectures, and we'll keep talking about this and make sure we're clear on everything. Here's a big question in relation to the importance of being ethical. What do we want most in life? I want to edit my slide already here. What do you, personally, you, want most in life? I've put some of the stock answers here. Amazing athletic prowess. Who wouldn't want to be able to play like Patrick Mahomes? Um, Vast piles of wealth like Scrooge McDuck over there on the right. Romance. That, uh, that's the closing kiss. I hope this isn't a spoiler from Slumdog Millionaire. I looked up on BuzzFeed to see what's the most romantic movie kiss there is, and it said Slumdog Millionaire. Who am I to disagree? Um, Think about this for a moment, though. What do you want most in life? Please think for yourselves, but there's pretty common consensus, especially among the philosophers that we'll look at in this course, that what we want more than anything else in life is happiness. Or maybe you're going to call it contentment or fulfillment, but something in that big ballpark that we tend to call happiness. Why do we want amazing athletic ability? That would make us famous and that would make us happy. Why do we want piles of money? We could buy whatever we wanted, help whoever we wanted, and that would make us happy. All roads seem to lead to happiness. Romance makes us feel valued. We're not lonely. We're not alone. And that makes us happy. I think this is probably an apocryphal quote from John Lennon. I've never been able to find it anywhere, but it sounds like John Lennon if you're an old Beatles fan like I am. Lennon supposedly said, "When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life." Yeah, I hope it's true. It's a good quote. And there really is consensus among some of the big gun philosophers that we're going to look at in this course. These guys are going to be your old friends here in a few more weeks. That happiness is what we want more than anything else in life. Please think for yourselves, but some big minds are suggesting happiness, and I promise this leads us to an important point. But look at Aristotle. What is the highest of all goods? There is very general agreement that it is happiness. Immanuel Kant, the German, happiness is the universal end of man. Sorry about the sexist terminology there. John Stuart Mill, British, actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness. By happiness is intended pleasure and the absence of pain. We could go on and on with this happiness idea that that's the goal of life. It's not just those three dead white guys I was showing you. It's more dead white guys. It's the great Greek rhetorician Isocrates believed that happiness was the goal in life. Um, Darwin's great Russian counterpart, Peter Kropotkin, fabulous natural scientist, believed happiness was the goal in life. Sigmund Freud, of all people, believed that happiness was the goal in life, and he believed sex was the key to that. So maybe we're back to that Slumdog Millionaire slide again. Anyway, there's pretty strong consensus that happiness is what we want most in life. Okay, so what? Here's why we've been talking about happiness, and this is one of the biggest ideas of our course. Among wildly different philosophers, there is strong common agreement that we cannot be happy as individuals unless we're ethical. That's such a big idea. Let me say that again. We cannot be happy unless we're ethical. We're going to explore this idea. That's amazing to me because our philosophers, especially Aristotle, Kant, John Stuart Mill, who agree on nothing. They give us wildly different ideas about ethics. The three of them and others do agree that what we want more than anything else in life is happiness, and that we don't stand a chance of being happy unless we're ethical. Think about that. What we want most in life, we must be ethical if we're going to secure that. That becomes a very big idea in this class. One of the rewards, I told you to suspend your cynicism a while ago. One of the rewards of being ethical, I hope one of the rewards of this class, and I'm 100% serious here, is that you are studying ways to increase your chances of being happy. Let's have a look at that. Let's start with the great Greek philosopher Aristotle. He tells us that happiness is an activity of the soul, the psyche, in accordance with perfect virtue. He does use the word psyche, meaning everything that we are, mentally, physically, spiritually, is pursuing perfect virtue, these values that we develop, and happiness comes from the pursuit of those values. Now, something I think gives him a lot of credibility is he says, hey, being virtuous is not enough to make us happy. External goods are also important. Things like a nice house, a lot of money, a nice car. Those weren't the examples he used. He does say, get this, he does say the most important external good is friendship. Friendship. Because a good friend, he says, will tell you when you have fallen out of line in your pursuit of virtue, which means there's no way you're going to be happy. But look at that first quote again. Happiness is an activity of everything we are seeking to fulfill our own values and virtues. Let's go to the 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who in most cases was vastly different from Aristotle, as we'll soon see. But he did agree that what we want more than anything else in life is happiness. And look at his own words here on the connection between ethics and happiness. He says the supreme created good is a world in which all rational beings are happy and are worthy of happiness, meaning they've earned it. How do we earn it? He says to be happy, we must be morally worthy. Again, pursuing and fulfilling our deepest values is our best path toward happiness. He does add a caution here, though, a big but. He says, and I think this gives him a lot of real world street credibility. He says that may not be enough. This is what I'm about to say is important. Kant says we have no chance of being happy unless we're striving to be ethical. No chance of being happy unless we're striving to be ethical. But he's honest. He says that may not be enough. Sometimes in our pursuit of being the best people we can be, things go wrong and we do end up as unhappy. Still, being ethical is the key to happiness, but he's realistic. He says it's not a 100% guarantee. John Stuart Mill, the 19th century British philosopher, is even more direct than his counterparts in this. He thinks ethics is the process of creating happiness. He famously says in his book on utilitarianism, ethics is the process of creating the greatest happiness for the greatest number. He has a very different approach to ethics than either Aristotle or Kant. He disagrees with Kant so much that he calls Kant's ethics philosophy grotesque. So vast differences among these guys, which makes it very impressive to me, and I hope to you, that they agree on two things. What we want more than anything else in the world is happiness. And these three different, admittedly men, from three very different cultures agree that our best path to being happy as being ethical, or at least they say we don't stand a chance of being happy unless we're ethical. And he goes on, he says, by happiness is intended pleasure and the absence of pain. Well, pleasure can be a scary word. He means more than, a six-pack of beer and a little Caesar's pizza and a good Netflix movie. He says that our pursuit of intellectual and moral pleasures create the greatest happiness. Again, trying to be a good person is our path to happiness. He says that's not easy, and there's this famous quote from Mill: "It's better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied." He's being cautionary here. He's saying this is not going to be easy. That our pursuit of happiness by being ethical is not going to be an easy thing, but we shouldn't settle for less. We shouldn't settle for the cheap pleasures. So here we are. And I hope you're entertaining this perhaps new idea that if we want to be happy at the deepest long-term levels, we need to be ethical people. And go back to the beginning of this lecture. I remember where I quoted Jerry Maguire and said, "We live in a cynical world, a cynical world." I want you to entertain this idea. We've got good evidence for it. Three great minds, and certainly more than that, are leading us in this direction. So the big question for us, if we buy this idea, is how do we be ethical? And that's largely what the rest of this course is going to be about. One cool but kind of scary aspect of all this is the concept of free will. Our philosophers believe we're not pre-programmed. We have to choose what we think will lead to happiness, which allows the possibility of choosing wrong. Aristotle says virtue is a state of character concerned with choice. Kant says much the same thing. We are legislators of a moral realm. We're the decision makers, which is possible through freedom. The freedom to choose right, the freedom to choose wrong. How do we make the right decisions here? We're free to choose. We have to choose. But how do we do that? That's what a lot of the rest of this course is going to be about. Kant actually uses free will to define ethics. And this definition of ethics suddenly becomes a very important thing. If what we want in life more than anything else is happiness, and our being ethical people is indispensable to our happiness, if these philosophers are right, we need to know what ethics are and make some good choices. Kant wraps free will right into that. He says that ethics are principles for the use of free will that will allow happiness. Notice how careful Kant is being there. Again, he's not saying it will guarantee it, but it will allow it. Just one standard definition, and I'm really stepping on our next lecture now. We'll bring this to a close in just a minute. But just some other conventional definitions of ethics before we build up to our class's official definition. Ethics are beliefs about right and wrong that guide the way we act. And ethics aren't just something that we have, they're something that we do. They're not just something that we have, they're something that we do. Thanks for listening, and this is where we'll pick it up next time in video lecture 3.